What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of Lost Boy by Christina Henry. Now, before we jump into the review, let's go over what is this book about. On an island lives a boy called Peter and his band of merry lost boys, young forever. That is, unless they get sick or killed by pirates or eaten by crocodiles, or unless, inexplicably, they grow old. For some of them do grow old, and nobody knows why. One of these boys is called Jamie, and he was the first boy that Peter ever brought to the island. Jamie's lived there for longer than he can remember, and it's not all fun and games. Peter thinks the boys are replaceable, that if one dies or grows up, he can simply swap in another from the other place, the place where he collects new playmates. Jamie looks out for the boys and takes care of them. He does everything Peter does not. Jamie tries to keep them alive because to him, they matter. When Peter steals a boy who's too young, Jamie takes the boy under his wing, but Peter won't have that, for nobody will ever take Jamie from him. Ever. Okay, guys, so the way that I normally structure my reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't enjoy so much, and these are preferential things, maybe a character I didn't like, or the prose, maybe even the length of the novel. But then I go into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up, and I break that down into 5 categories. But before we get into that, let's jump into the good. So what were some things about this book that I enjoyed? Man, there is quite a lot. This was a fantastic retelling. This is probably my favorite fairy tale retelling that I've ever read. I haven't read that many, but I've read a few, and this one is just amazing, and it is creepy. Yeah, it is pretty dark. So if you kind of miss something as far as like the description of the book goes, and in the previous section, we're following young Jamie, who we ultimately know grows up to become Captain Hook. So in this version of Peter Pan, Captain Hook was actually the first lost boy, and for some reason he tends to be growing up at a very, very slow rate, but growing up nonetheless, and it's because Peter doesn't care about the boys. Peter doesn't care about anybody except Peter. He's only worried about having fun. He's only worried about what he wants, and he gets what he wants all of the time. You know, if a boy dies, who cares? He'll go get another one. If a boy gets sick or eaten by crocodiles, who cares? I'll go get another one. Or if a boy starts getting on his nerves, you know, maybe that boy will find himself surrounded by pirates without a weapon, just by coincidence or happenstance. And that gives Peter the opportunity to go and get another one, because as far as Peter's code goes, he only wants around 15 boys at a time. He doesn't want more than that, as far as we're told in this book. And so the only way that he can justify going and getting another one is if he loses one. And so sometimes he just orchestrates that in such a way where he's still blameless. It's not his fault they ended up in the swamp by themselves. It's not his fault they ended up on a pirate ship by themselves or whatever. It's not his fault that they ended up in the jungle where there's monsters. And so he's like, well, I guess that one's dead, so I can go get another one. And if that sounds pretty debased and like deplorable to you, it's because it is, and that's how it is represented in this book. And so because Peter doesn't care about anybody but Peter, and he sees the boys as toys to him. They're not people, they're just playthings, and once it runs out of its usefulness, he wants to discard them. That then it falls to Jamie to take care of these boys. And so Jamie has to become the adult of the group. He has to make sure, the Lost Boys, they have to eat, despite what we see in the movie Hook. They have to eat. They need shelter. They need clothing. They need to be trained on how to fight the pirates. They need to learn how to set traps and to hunt and to fight. And all of these things, these responsibilities that obviously Peter doesn't want any part of, fall to Jamie to take care of. Because of all this, Jamie becomes more and more bitter towards Peter and disillusioned towards the mystique surrounding Peter. We obviously know where the story ends because it is the story of Peter Pan and Captain Hook, but to get to see it from Jamie's perspective, man, it's It might be. It's probably my favorite version of Peter Pan I've ever read. I'm actually not a huge Peter Pan fan. I don't really care for the original story. I read the original book several years ago, and it was fine. But I never really saw Peter as a good guy. It always seemed like Peter was doing kind of what he's doing in this book, which is just being selfish. And he's like,
Hey, there's a kid crying. Let me go kidnap him and bring him to Neverland, where he can't ever go back to his family.
so that's sort of the route that Christina Henry takes here, and she takes it to completion. It's pretty wild. So what did I like about this book? Man, the character of James Hook is this story will make you empathize with him in such a way that I will never be able to hear this story the same again. We actually watched Hook immediately after my kids and I did, and it made me really empathize with Captain Hook. It made you understand his ire and malice that he holds for Peter. So the characters are fantastic. I really loved the perspective. The setting, obviously you're in Neverland, but you're in Neverland if it wasn't so jolly, if it wasn't so glamorous. If you were to pull that back, what are you left with? And that's sort of how Christina Henry presents it. So the setting's great. The pacing is super fast. Also, this isn't a long book. I think it's like 250 pages maybe. It took me a couple days to read through it. It is such a quick, lightning fast read. I think you'll fly through it very, very, very quickly. So it's that great palate cleanse. So the plot though is, man, it will break your heart. It will absolutely wreck you. So if you're not ready for that, this isn't the book for you. But yeah, this book will absolutely, it will hurt all of your feelings at once. And she does such a good job at it. She's so intentional on not just how she writes, but what she writes and when she puts these things in that, yeah, it definitely becomes a bit of a knife to the heart at times. And by the end of the book, you might be thinking that somebody's cutting onions beside you. It is at times difficult to read, but it's such a fantastic book. And I want to give a shout out to Zachary Shea for recommending this. He recommended it to a group of us when we were talking, and I've talked to him since then. And he sort of pushed me over that edge of like, I really think you need to read this. This is the book that I recommend to everybody. And man, he was right on the money. So it is just a phenomenal read. So this leads me into the bad. So what were some things in this book that I didn't enjoy so much? And if I'm being just transparent with you guys, there really wasn't anything in here that I didn't like. It was so good. It was dark. And I have not read a dark book in quite a while, but man, the themes were so heavy, and it was what I was really looking for. It was the perfect October read for me. I mean, because you have that familiar with the new, but with that dark setting and undertone, man, it was just, for me, I thought it was practically flawless. So as far as like what were things in here that I didn't prefer, I would say there's nothing. I absolutely love this book. So this leads me into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break this down into 5 categories and I rate them out of 10, starting with violence and brutality. Now for violence and brutality, I'm going to give this an 8. Yeah, it can be pretty brutal, pretty violent at times, especially brutal because we're dealing with children. So just like the synopsis described, these boys are disposable to Peter, and you see that firsthand, and it can be pretty brutal at times. Sometimes he will pit the boys against each other, just for his own entertainment and amusement, sometimes to the death. And it can just be, there's a couple of scenes in particular that are very brutal and heavy. I tell people this is Peter Pan meets Lord of the Flies. So, if you're not ready for that kind of violence towards children or really between children, then I would say, yeah, maybe steer clear. And I don't want to make it sound like, but if you like that, you should read it, But I do just kind of want to like forewarn you that it's there. Because while, these are still children, Jamie is probably 60 or 70 years old by the time we read this. And so, he's mature. He's just a little boy, physically, but it definitely, changes the dynamic. So this leads me into category 2, which is sexually explicit content. And for sexually explicit content, yeah, this is an absolute 0. Guys, there's nothing sexually explicit in here. We're dealing with children. There's nothing in here to be wary of. So yeah, it's an absolute 0. Nothing to be worried over. So this leads me into category 3, which is language. Now for language, I'm going to give this a 1. And the reason I gave it a 1 is because you do deal with some of the pirates, and I think maybe they threw an expletive around, or maybe it was just like alluded to. I can't exactly recall. There's nothing that comes to mind where I was like, ooh, yeah, that was explicit. And even if there was any type of profane language or any type of vulgarity, I wouldn't say it was like crude profanity or like the really heavy hitters. I would say it's PG as far as the language goes. So really nothing to worry about in my opinion, but there might be something in there that I missed, but overall, I don't remember there being anything. So this leads me into category 4, which is gratuitous inclusions. Now for gratuitous inclusions, I also have this at an absolute 0. There's nothing gratuitous or inclusive in here for the sake of diversity and inclusivity. There's none of that. This is just an excellent story. That we do have a diverse cast, but it's because you have a diverse cast. So yeah, fantastic story. There's nothing diverse or inclusive in here that is like intentionally trying to virtue signal to anybody or anything like that. So yeah, it's an absolute 0. So this leads me into dark themes. Now for dark themes, I also include heavy themes. So yeah, some of the more heavy topics. So this is like the more heavy topics, but then also things that are spiritual in nature. And for this, I'm going to give an 8. Yeah, this is pretty high. Like I said, you're dealing with children. You're dealing with violence, brutality against children. You're dealing with psychological manipulation, things like that of these children, exploitation of children, all those kinds of things. And so, man, it is pretty heavy. It is a pretty heavy read. But I will say, for anybody that loves the movie Hook or loves the story of Peter Pan, this is, for me, it's a must read. It is just that story that you didn't know you needed to be told from Captain Hook's perspective and his backstory. So yeah, there are several times where you are just absolutely broken for some of these characters. Jamie in particular. Yeah, there's some pretty heavy stuff in here at times. I don't think there's anything spiritual in nature, but yeah, there are some very heavy topics that are mentioned in here. So maybe just be aware of that before you pick it up. So this leads me into the final question, which is, would I recommend it to a Christian? And I would say, yes, I would. But it depends on the reader. So I would not recommend this to everybody. I would not recommend this to some of my friends that I know do not like the heavier types of reads. They want the lighthearted, just sort of entertaining, really whimsical type of reads. This is not going to be for you. This is going to be for people that maybe don't quite like horror, but maybe want to lean into like some of those heavier books. Yeah, I definitely think that you'll like this. I think if you like horror, you'll like this. I'm not saying it is horror, but I think if you like horror, that you will like this. On top of that, if you love the Peter Pan story and it's like a perfect book for you, then maybe don't read this, because it will definitely skew your view of Peter and Jamie quite a bit. I think it will, because like I said, I will never be able to read or hear that story the same way again because of this book. But this is also my favorite version of this story, if that tells you anything. So would I recommend it to a Christian? I would have to sort of parse through some things with you. Like, I'd have to ask you some questions about different types of movies or stories that you like, and I would be able to tell from there. But because I would not recommend this to everybody, but it is one of my favorite reads of the year, and it's one of those that's going to stay with me. So I would definitely recommend this to you if that sounds good to you. If Peter Pan meets Lord of the Flies, if that sounds good to you, then I think you will absolutely love this, and it'll be one of your favorite books of all time. If that doesn't sound good to you, then I would say, yeah, maybe this just isn't the book for you. So overall, guys, I absolutely loved Lost Boy. Thank you again so much to Zach for recommending it. Man, it was fantastic. It has made me wonder about some of her other books, and he's mentioned a few for me to probably steer clear of. But yeah, this was just so well done. So yeah, absolutely love this book. It's going to make me kind of look for similar books in that same vein of these sort of fairy tale retellings. It's almost like a Grimm's fairy tale version of Peter Pan. So yeah, I absolutely love this, and I think many of you will as well. So thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble about Lost Boy for a little bit. Guys, thank you so much for liking and subscribing to the channel. But more than anything, I would ask that you would share these videos to your Christian brothers and sisters, because it is my hope with this channel that I can be a good resource to my brothers and sisters in Christ, so that maybe we can spend our time, money, and energy a little more wisely on things that honor the Lord. So thank you guys so much again for coming and hanging out. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.